I was so inspired by photojournalism, and I would see these photos that were so powerful all these decades later. They're still remembered. And sure, I'm never going to change the world with one photo, but I might be able to do that for a family.
Guys, I'm so excited. We have the Anni Graham here. She is someone that I've looked up to, a huge mentor of mine. We own her presets. We've used them on all our photos that we've taken, just like with family trips and all that. And I just resonate so much with her style, the way that she has storytelling locked in with her photos. It's just incredible. So Anni, thank you so much for joining me today for this podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, before we kind of get started, I would love to just learn about your background. I don't know you too well, just from a life perspective. So why don't you just fill us in with, who you are, how you got started into photography and all that jazz.
I live here in Oregon with my husband. I have 2 boys. I kind of always knew I was going to be a photographer. So I grew up in India. My parents lived and worked there. And I moved to the States after I graduated high school when I was 18. But I knew I wanted to be a photographer even then. Like I didn't even sign up for college or I went to a boarding school and all my friends, were going to become lawyers and doctors. And I was like, I'm just going to be a photographer. I don't know what that looks like, but I was going to. Probably having that cross-cultural experience really influenced me to want to, be a photojournalist. I wanted to work for National Geographic. I wanted to travel and tell stories. That was my biggest thing. I studied it a bit in college. I eventually went to a school for photography and realized I probably couldn't be a photojournalist and have a family and live the life that I wanted. It was kind of like a diehard single person career. And I don't know if it is that way anymore, but it kind of felt like it when I was trying to get into it. And so I decided to leave that behind and pursue weddings, which is something I always did. I mean, once you're a photographer, everyone's like, hey, can you come shoot my wedding for free? Or can I give you $100 to come shoot my wedding? So I've been shooting weddings since 2009, 2010, a long time ago. Anyways, it kind of took me a really long time to get into weddings because I was really pursuing photojournalism and really just doing weddings on the side. And back then too, they kind of looked really different, or at least the version of them that I was exposed to, pre-Instagram, pre-Lightroom was like this very staged, very posed version of wedding photography. And I worked for these wedding photographers and I would go and assist them on weddings. And it just was so far from photojournalism, so far. There was nothing real. It didn't feel, it was a real moment that was happening, but it just felt so staged. And so there was something that was really missing for me. So I just didn't even consider it. And then I got married in 2016. And it was kind of like right around the time when elopement started to become knowledgeable. Instagram was had really taken off by then. And there was this elopement that Ben Heisch photographed up at Rattlesnake Ledge in Washington, where they this couple, hiked up in the rain. And anyways, I just remember that elopement so well. And it influenced my own wedding so much. We just had a little 30-person wedding on the beach off our favorite backpacking trail. And from that experience, I realized, okay, weddings could be different. I was starting to get exposed to weddings that were a little bit different. And I decided if this is what I can do with weddings, then this is how I can kind of be a photojournalist and, still have this life that I really wanted to live with family, being at home, having kids, all of that. And so back in 2016, I started my business full time. So we're almost at 8 years of doing this now. And pretty soon after that, I started teaching and doing education. And so I have a big education business now too, Immersed Education, that I co-own with Manda from Manco Creative, who's a designer planner. And that's been really incredible. I feel like I've had a lot of things that have influenced me along the way to really get to this point of kind of even just what my business looks like and feels like and what I really care about and think through it all. I tend to be this person who I don't really want to do something unless it feels right. And that's kind of been basically the core of everything I've tried to do with education too, is you don't have to do anything a certain way and you don't have to do what everyone else is doing. I think it's really important as a creative and as someone who's building their own career that you get to kind of make it look like whatever you want it to look like. And you can define success for yourself, and you should be, not what everyone else is saying that it is. And I think like even the way I grew up in India, I mean, what they did to their parents was crazy. Like they lived and worked on things that they really cared about. And they brought their whole family to another country because they thought that was, you know, a really important thing. And so I've really been influenced by that, by my childhood, by how I grew up to really do things that matter and do things that are really important, no matter what everyone else is saying or doing or whatever. So here I am now, wedding photographer in Oregon, educator, and just still kind of learning and trying out new things all the time and building my business, you know, year by year.
Figuring it out, right? Every year.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure it out. So I'm so curious with the whole India thing. Like, is it something that you kind of look back on, wish that your parents didn't do, like didn't take you there? Do you respect them for what they were going after? And yeah, tell me about that.
So my parents were missionaries, so they worked together. I mean, my parents had different projects that they worked on while they were there, but it was very much like a family endeavor, doing things together all the time.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 2 older siblings.
Okay.
And I mean, it's just a really, I know that it's a really different way of growing up. Like being a foreigner in another country, but then living there from such a young age that you don't remember your home country. So that really feels like my home country, but I don't look it, I don't sound it. You know, I'll never be Indian, obviously. That came with, I think, a lot of benefit. Like I really am so grateful for having that upbringing, for, you know, the way that it's opened my mind to so many different versions of life and living and values. And I think that lends a lot to photography too, like really understanding things that are outside of my own world. Like I can't ever even like create an educational course without thinking of, okay, what is this like for a photographer in Egypt? What is this like for a photographer listening to it in Finland? What's it like for a photographer listening to this in India? Like, and it's so different. And so having that like worldwide perspective, I think is probably the biggest takeaway that I've had from growing up in that country. But it's also come with a lot of challenges. I just feel really different, and I have a hard time finding people that I can really connect to, because it's harder, I think, to connect with people who have such a small worldview and, you know, who maybe grew up in a state, you know, and had never left that state and never traveled and seen the rest of the world. That's not so much what it's like anymore, especially with wedding photographers who are traveling all the time. But it wasn't easy moving back to the States. I really didn't like America for a long time. It was like the loneliest country I'd ever experienced. There's something really different about India and the community over there, and just the way people live. I mean, it's hard to even describe. Yeah. You're with everyone around you. You're with people that you know. You're with people you live next to, and you're in and out of their lives on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to like plan, you know, cocktail hour at 5 to hang out with your friends. You just go over to their house and you're there until you feel like leaving. Like it's just a really different social environment. And that was a really tough transition coming back to the States, and then feeling like it is so hard to rebuild that in this country. So hard to rebuild that for my kids, you know, just in like our own personal life and how other people around us live. And so I'm really grateful for it. It really has influenced me a lot. And also It's been hard.
Yeah. So kind of explain that to me a little bit. Like you don't have to text them and ask them if you can come over. It's almost like just like open door policy, or do you feel
Yeah.
like the culture over there is just like, hey, the point of life is to be with each other, like
Yeah.
actual community,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like my friends here, I'll see them like once every 3 weeks or once a month at most. And that's like,
Yeah,
pretty thriving mom friends versus
that's wild.
versus like in India, you just see each other every day. Maybe you have a
Mm,
smaller group of people, but it's just an everyday thing because you're living together. You're not trying to find it's like when I moved to the US, it's like, wow, if I ever want to hang out with anyone, I have to either plan an event or go to an event, whether it's coffee or cocktails or a birthday party, or let's go see a movie, or let's go to the rodeo, or I mean, whatever it is, you're either going to an event or you're planning an event. And it's
mhm.
it's just so
It's almost like there's just like a vibration in us that's like, oh no, we can't just like sit and talk. We can't
yeah,
just be.
yes.
That feels
Or it's like,
awkward.
yeah, someone comes over if I'm not doing something or like having a full on, like you have to sit and talk. And then once the talking is over, they're like, all right, I'm going to go home. It's not like that
Hmm.
in India. It's like you come over and you hang out. Hey, I got to go do something really quick. You go do it, and then, all right, what should we do today? Like, let's, you're just together. It's
Wow.
hard to even describe because it's just so different.
What's the economy like in a world like that? You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
don't feel this innate feeling of like I have to push through. I gotta like build my business. I have to do better, be better, do more things. Obviously, you're like this was like more of a young age for you, so I think always like in our youth, it's a little bit easier to feel like, oh man, remember the good old days when we didn't have to do too much and worry about bills and worry about all that stuff. But did you have an understanding of like, no, this is like completely a countrywide thing where even the adults who have children still feel like this, we can kind of relax and be together. And this is the point of life.
Yeah, you're just not alone. So,
Okay.
yeah, you're not just working nonstop like you do here.
Yeah.
So it's not this work to live or live to work. That's like a conversation I think a lot of people have here in the US. It's like
Mhm.
I'm doing this to make money so I can hang out, or I'm like, you know, there's this like split between working and living. Sure, people are still working and they're still working really, really hard, but they're working and also like supporting their parents. Like there's no old people homes in India, I don't think. I really don't think
No,
they
I
even
don't think,
exist. That's
no,
not a
it's
thing.
it's not, it's $1 billion industry that got built off of people just being lazy and not wanting
Yeah.
to take care of their parents.
Or they're too busy because they're working so
Yep.
much. So it's like
Hmm.
parents and like even right now, my brother is 44, 45 years old. He's not married yet and he lives with my parents. And that in America is like, oh, what's wrong with him? And that in India is like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, he's looking after his parents. Like he's like, that's not
Yeah.
a weird thing at all. And here it's like shunned or shameful to like still live with your family and still live as a family unit after a certain age because it's so expected that you move out or you move away or you build your own, like you grow
Yeah.
and you move on. Whereas in India, it's like people still live together, generations still
Hmm.
live together, and that's like an expected thing instead of in the US it's like this very shameful thing. And like even right now, we live in Bend, Oregon, and a year after we moved here, we convinced my sister to move here, and then we convinced my parents to move here, who my brother was also living with
Wow.
my parents. And so my whole family lives in Bend now. And whether or not we ever want to move away, we won't, because this is so important. And getting to be with my whole family in the same city again is such a big deal, especially with having kids and having them come over multiple days a week and us seeing them and helping each other out, whether it's like, hey, can we have dinner tonight together because I'm too tired and don't want to cook? Like, we are constantly doing that. We have a family dinner night with everyone, once a week. Like, we're very much in each other's lives, and nobody that I know who I live next to here in Bend, or even that I know in the photography community, is like that involved with their own family. And I think that's so sad, and something that feels so natural to us because of that huge experience that we had in India. But it's like we're so sad and so lonely and independent. But it's also a cultural thing here in the US that you're expected to do that, and you're expected to go off on your own and build your own life. And depending on anybody is shameful, and asking for help from anyone is shameful. And then we're all sick and are full of anxiety and depression and not healthy people at all. But we're alone, and we're doing that on purpose, and we're doing that to ourselves. And I think it's just so sad. Honestly, I feel like being in the education space in photography has been a really incredible breath of fresh air, because building your own business as a photographer can be so lonely, and you're like working by yourself a lot of the time. And I think just being in the education space has really brought this level of community into my job. That's something that I didn't have before I started doing education. And I think it's like that missing piece, and that piece that feels like home to me, where I get to like have these great conversations with people and get to meet people at workshops or conferences and events. And there's room for everyone to grow their businesses to be thriving, successful people. And it's so different when you do it together than if you're just trying to do it on your own, or you're trying to jump off of people to do it on your own. I mean, that's like another huge reason why I started education as soon as I pretty much started doing this full time, was because I resonated with it so much that this is a really important thing to be involved in, to be doing this together with other people, because I'm learning from other people all the time.
So wild. I'm relearning what true community means, and I know that we're not there yet. I know we have so far to go to really provide community for people, even in a church setting. I think they speak highly of like, hey, find your community, but you go to any church in America and you're like, hey, I don't really see it like played out really well. You know what I mean? Like for your example, you're like, no, I see it better in other countries than I do anywhere in America.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we could deconstruct, I think we have a better chance of deconstructing the photography industry as a whole and recreating a foundation of what true community means here than trying to do it for America. But let's just say we could start in the photography world for wedding photographers. What would that kind of look like? And maybe what does that look like in your education sphere? And how can we build a community together to where we're all, building our businesses, but also feel like we can truly lean on people and say, and feel vulnerable, and be able to be like, hey, I'm struggling in this area. Can anybody help me? And then you're actually finding people willing to jump in and be like, yeah, let me help you in that area.
I would say probably one of the most valuable things I've found is workshops.
Yeah.
Mostly I'm hosting them, but even if I'm attending or teaching at one, all the people that I talk to now almost on a daily, consistent basis, I met at a workshop. And it wasn't about like the teaching that I heard. I mean, it was great. It wasn't, the content shoots that we did, although those are also great. It was really the relationships that I built through meeting people face to face and having real conversations and realizing that we're all on the same page. We're all going after the same thing, and we're all struggling with the same thing. So I have, and it's kind of interesting too, because I have just a handful of photographers that I talk to all the time that have been either past students or just people that I've taught alongside or something like that. And most of the time we're just texting each other like, hey, I got this inquiry from this person and they're asking for this. What would you do? Like, what do you think? Or can we have a call sometime because I'm not getting any inquiries at all and I'm totally freaking out and I just need to talk to someone about it. And so we'll have like a 2-hour conversation about what's happening this year. And, even just like feeling like the other person is experiencing that someone else is experiencing the same thing, or somebody that you can go to ask a question about where you don't feel like you have to pay them, or you don't feel like they're going to give you an answer that, or you're going to bother. I think the biggest thing is people feel like you're going to bother them by asking them, or it's like inappropriate to be asking this question because that's like, something information they could be selling, or, it's so weird, right? How we feel whenever we're like, I just need to know this one thing. Who can I ask that wouldn't be bothered by me asking that question? And I think that's such a weird assumption that we're making. And I think we're making that assumption because maybe we've experienced those types of people before, or because it's so ingrained in us to be so independent. Just once in a while, I'll go to a workshop and I'll really connect with somebody and we keep in touch and we've built a relationship where we can go to each other when we're struggling, or we can ask questions where we don't know the answer to, or whatever that is. And it's been such a valuable thing for me. Obviously I can't do it with everyone, but I don't know. I feel really grateful for it that I found it. And I think it's crazy too, that it's not more prevalent. Like there's just a handful of people that feel comfortable enough to have this back and forth with me. Right. And even though I offer that so much. So right now in Immersed Education, we recently started a membership because I wanted that open space for us to for me to provide education and to provide, this is what I do in this situation. And then also to have this huge community chat where people can ask questions and people can, be vulnerable and be like, hey, I don't know how to do this, or does anyone have any advice for this? And it is like a struggle to get people to just be involved. And I think it's so crazy that there's this safe space that you've paid to be a part of, and still people have such a hard time asking and being open. And maybe it's even asking a question or asking for advice makes you look weak, or makes you look like you don't know. And so you don't even want to do that. Or even, asking to be mentored, or like all of it. We're all trying to put on this facade of like these incredible, successful photographers that know everything and can do everything and be independent in everything. And even when people are paying to be in a space where they can ask questions, they don't. And I just think that's the craziest thing ever to me. And I'm there in it every day, like ready and waiting. And I've only ever found like this handful of people that I have these incredible relationships with, where I feel like I don't have to be alone in my business. And of all the hundreds of people I've ever interacted with, sometimes it just blows my mind that there's only a few that are still there, that have stuck around, that are vulnerable enough or comfortable enough to be like, hey, can you help me? Or that I feel like I can, talk to them about what's actually happening with me in my business in a really honest way, and they won't judge me for it.
Just culture in general has built up this like crazy callous on people's hearts to be vulnerable and to ask questions. And they know deep down that they want to ask these questions to get out of the rut that they're in.
Yeah.
But there's just something that's keeping them back, saying like, hey, if I do ask this question, like I'm going to be judged, and I don't want to feel that pain or that awkwardness.
Yeah.
When in reality, that's not even there. You know what I mean? We have educators, people that have experience like you and I, that are willing and open and ready to answer all your questions. And it brings us joy to help you out. You know what I mean? In any way we possibly can.
Yeah.
And yet people just struggle. And I think that's something that we really have to focus on. Of like, how are we going to unpack this? How are we going to, write the message clear enough that, hey, we are available, and we never want you to feel like you can't ask a question. No question is too dumb or silly
Yeah.
to ask,
Yeah.
you know?
I feel like it's the people who are bold enough to get there, to be willing to ask for help, or to be asked to be mentored, or to ask for advice. Their businesses are doing big things. They weren't ever afraid to be teachable, to be open, to be willing to change. And the people
Yeah,
who are
humble.
in the position,
Humility.
who are like ready to learn and eager to learn, and who are bold enough to ask for advice and ask
Mm.
for help. I look back and I feel like
That's so
those are
true.
the people who are making big strides.
The single-handedly best thing you can do for your business is to, every single time something comes up in your mind of like, hey, I don't know how to do this, go ask. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go figure it out. You know, never being too proud or say like, oh, I'm 5 years in my business, I probably shouldn't do that education course.
Yeah.
Or shouldn't join it. I should be farther along than I
Yeah.
actually am. I'm not gonna do it. It's like,
Yeah.
no, the people that I see are eating up education left and right, are asking all the questions, are getting involved, are going to these workshops and retreats because they know they're ready and they're hungry to
Yeah.
get anything and everything out of them and implement it into their own businesses.
Yeah.
And so I've seen that across the board with some people. And those are the people that just get ahead faster.
This last weekend, actually, I have a photographer friend whose dad passed away very suddenly. And she called me on Wednesday, like, I have a wedding on Saturday. Can you help me? And so me and another photographer, we showed up and we shot that wedding for her. And we went above and beyond to try to make that client as happy as possible. And I've had other photographers ask me that too. Like, I just feel so vulnerable in this job. Like, what if anything happens to me? What am I ever going to do? And I'm like, well, you have to have people around you that can
Yeah.
show up for you, that can be there in a time of need. That, there is so much pressure on us to show up and perform. And it's this once in a lifetime event for our clients. And even that is like, if you don't have those people, that's a red flag. That's something that's like too much pressure on you to hold, I think. And I've said this before to my students and to other people, who come to workshops and have asked this question before. If you don't feel like you have people you can ask questions to, or people that you could ask to show up for you when an emergency happens and you can't, that needs to be like a number one focus in your business this year or this season, to go to a workshop or to reach out to the people who live near you, who are in your community, or people that you look up to or feel like you're on this, the same level as, or whatever it is. It's not just about building your business and being really successful and making a ton of money and, having the coolest clients and the best photos and all of that. If you're just doing it alone, one, it's so sad. And two, like, there's no room for you to mess up. What type of life is that? There's no room for you to be human, for you to go through something that you don't know how to go through. Like, that's miserable and sad and terrible. And I don't know. I would never want a career like that. And this really is a pretty, like, compared to another business where you have a whole team and there's this whole office building where someone can come in and take your job. We don't have that, right? We're totally on our own.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we should be. I don't think this is something that we should or need to be doing by ourselves at all.
I love that. Just a great mindset to have is that, like, think of your photography business just as a normal corporation. And like, yeah, it's you shooting those weddings, of course, most of the time. But what if you had a foundation underneath of you, kind of like a silent team, a community that you could call on to whenever you need help in your business, whenever you need answers, but then also a team that's ready to go fight for you, be there, show up, go above and beyond. I just had the same thing happen with Josh Helton from A Little Long Distance last week, where he had a wedding out here. I was supposed to second shoot for him, and his entire family got sick. And so 4 days before the event, he can't go.
Yeah.
And so I was like, dude, do you think you can lead it? And I'm like, bro, I have you. You know what I mean? I got you covered. No questions asked. I'll reach out to the planner. I'll reach out to the couple,
Yeah.
make sure that they feel comfortable. I showed up at the rehearsal dinner just to introduce myself, even though I didn't have to be there.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things. Like I want to make sure that they feel good when I show up on the wedding day. Like, did I do everything that I possibly could to make this couple feel like it was Josh there?
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. It's like, that just was kind of like a mental shift in my head right now of like, are you building your photography business like you would a corporation and have teams and systems in place, and then like have just the support that's constantly supporting your business and the growth each and every day. It's really good.
You need your people.
With you know, building your photography business, I think you've seen so many things. I'm assuming you've traveled a ton, and now you've built this education portion. You have a family, you have small children. I think there's a lot of people out there that are chasing this carrot of success, and they have this idea of what success looks like. What does success look like for you? And I know recently it's probably always changing, but would love to just kind of hear your thoughts, because I think you've had that experience and maybe can just like shut the door on some things that people are like thinking about chasing before they go and chase them.
This has been something that has been huge just in conversations between me and my husband, and figure out how to have it all. I want to have it all. But what does having it all mean? I think is different. So having it all for me is being a photographer. I can never give that up, right? I think a lot of people in the education space feel like the financial freedom to give it up. I can never give it up. I always want to do it in some capacity. Weddings, I don't know.
Can I pause you though for a second?
What?
When you say photographer, I never want to give it up. What's like the one thing you don't want to give up? Like what's the perfect, you know, wedding or whatever? Like there's got to be something that you like absolutely love, and then like 80% of everything else can fall off the table. I don't need to shoot that anymore. But like, what's the one thing that just like makes you light up?
It's always kind of been the same thing though, is like that creative space to make something that's meaningful to someone. Polaroid picture of my kid on their 3-year-old birthday that like, God, I love that one picture I took so much. Or pictures of a family that's growing, someone on their wedding day. I mean, that's almost like the easiest answer, but it isn't always that either. I did a photo shoot for someone once that just left an abusive relationship, and she just wanted pictures of herself to like remember who she was when she left, like that fierce strength in her. So I just did like portraits for her. It can look like anything. Right now it's weddings. It used to be elopements. Before that, it used to be like a lot of portraits, something that I want to get into more. It can look like so many things. I'm best at documenting things I understand. So like my family photos exploded after I had kids. Like I just understood it from this totally different perspective. I've done one like home birth photo shoot for somebody before, and I did home births too. And so that was like a big thing for me too. I mean, it can look like anything, but really just that creative expression of documenting something that will mean something to someone for a long, long time. I feel that in a big way, looking back at any photo I've taken of, you know, my family, especially. And I mean, our wedding pictures are great, but like I could be so happy with just one of them too. I never want to give that up. I never want to. It'll always be there.
I think that's really sweet. And it's like never losing that zeal for what a photo means. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you said, that person who left the divorce, like, wow, that's like super heavy. You know what I mean? So it's not just a photo. It represents something.
Yeah.
You know
it's
what I mean?
Whole
and we all do
story.
that.
Yeah. It's all going on for them. I only understand a tiny portion of it, but that's a huge thing they can look back on and remember how they felt. I was so inspired by photojournalism because I would see these photos. I mean, we had to study, right? Like famous images of history. And I would see these photos that were so powerful all these decades later. They're still remembered.
Yeah.
they were significant photos in the history of the world, that documented something that was happening or whatever it was. Like, that's just crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. And sure, I'm never going to change the world with one photo, but I might be able to do that for a family or for a person or, for an extended family at a wedding or whatever it is. Like, I see myself doing that in a really small way, or I'm like aiming to do that in a small way for these individual families and these individual people, relationships, from the same inspiration that I got from studying these famous pictures of history and of moments and of, obviously a lot of them are really terrible things that happened, but like powerful images of things that happened too.
Yeah.
And they stand the test of time because that one photo tells the story of this huge event that happened, which is crazy. And it's always funny when I think of like how many photos I actually deliver for a wedding, which I don't think is necessary. It's expected. I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
I do it.
So you want to change that?
Really, really, when people look back, they're going to look back and feel really strongly, or could remember the entire day and the entire event through like 10 photos. It doesn't have to be 2000. It's probably not going to be 2000. It's probably going to be like 5 to 10 that really can tell the story of the entire day, of the entire weekend, or whatever it is. But that's something I never want to give up. So yeah, I'm still trying to refine that over and over again through education, mentoring, like me being mentored. Like, I hope to always do that the rest of my life, right? To be a better photographer, to grow that skill, to tell better stories. Okay, so I'm still trying to grow my photography business, but I also am like really, really an alternative mom, home birth, probably homeschool.
We did all those too.
Yeah. So like, I want to be home. I want to be present. I want to be in my kids' life. I want to know what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And I want them to remember and to know and have access to me, in a big, big way, for me and my husband, for him to not ever have to, leave and get a job. He's a stay-at-home dad right now. And my business allows him that freedom. And we even said this morning, actually, like, that's just so huge for him that he gets to be a stay-at-home dad. So shameful in this culture.
Another thing we have to break off of, I think, culture, right?
I went to so many weddings before I had kids where my husband would come and assist me. Mm-hmm. Like, probably 75% of the time, some old drunk uncle would come up to my husband and say, "So how long are you going to be holding your wife's purse?" Like, it was openly shameful that he was there assisting his wife on projects, because I was obviously the main photographer and he was there assisting me. Like, and even the whole, "Oh, what does your husband do?" "Oh, he's a stay-at-home dad." Just that. We feel so grateful for it. So grateful that we have that freedom that a lot of people don't have. And that, like, my boys get to like be with their dad every day. I mean, that's amazing and incredible. And so that family life is a really, really big deal for me, that we get to take time disconnected, outdoors, away from things. We're connected with family, we're at home, we're available, and we're very involved. So how do you do that with a business? I have scaled back a lot. I used to shoot, the year before I got pregnant, I shot like 70 elopements, 70 shoots and elopements in a year. I mean, it was like, I was full-time all the time, traveling all the time. It was nonstop. And a big part of elopements too was a lot of the planning. And I realized I can give a lot to a project, but then when I'm home, I want to be home. And so I made this big transition from elopements to high-end weddings, because there's these incredible planners that do all the planning for you. And you have to show up in a big way, but you show up in a big way for a weekend, and then you get to be at home and just work on the photos and work on the project to deliver it. You don't have to do all this back end stuff that I was doing for elopements. And so that felt like, okay, it's like I'm trying to find a way to still keep growing as a photographer and grow my business, but also without compromising this home life that I really, really value more than anything. But the business supports the type of home life that I want. So I'm constantly trying to find the balance of what's my capacity at work to have the home life that I want. I will probably never be a millionaire or multimillionaire or whatever people are ever striving to become, because you have to work so much to have even an education business that provides something like that. And I'm not doing this to make millions of dollars. I'm doing this to support the type of home life that I want. So how many weddings do I need to support that? That's my cap, and I'm good. And so the amount of weddings that I do has just decreased a lot. And I'm not trying to do more. I'm not trying to do $1 million weddings. I don't have this like huge, never ending, I have to be the best. I have to be the most successful. It's all really informed by the home life that I want to have and the mom that I want to be. And I know what I need to do in my business to do that. And then I know like that the business is just something else that I really love, or the photography is something else that I really love. And so I'm constantly trying to find that balance of getting to do this thing that I really love, getting to have like the home life that I really want. I really want it all. But it doesn't mean like success doesn't have a number, like a dollar number amount on it. It has a lot to do more with lifestyle. Yeah. And that's probably been the biggest shift that I've made since becoming a mom and having kids, is that just doesn't really matter to me anymore. It's more like the integrity of what I'm doing matters.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of changing as I'm pregnant one summer and not pregnant the next summer. And how much can I actually do? And it's going up and down, and I'm still trying to find my stride in it. But my values have just shifted, and it's made my work better. It's made my education better. I think it's made everything better becoming a mom and having that really big, massive shift of values. But it looks really different than a lot of other photographers that I see out there. So
if we could speak to, this one avatar of a person, we're talking mom who aspires to be a wedding photographer, has kids, trying to find the balance of it all. Is there any like advice that you could kind of speak on of like how you've been able to build your business, how you've been able to get these weddings that have helped you, subsidize the time so you're not photographing 50 weddings a year? Like, is there anything that you can maybe speak on of just like, yeah, I've been able to build my business because I've kind of done this along the way? I know that there's a lot of things that you've done well to get you to where you're at, but maybe there's just one thing.
I would say having like a really clear idea of what you want your business to look like is probably the biggest thing. I'm actually doing a long-term mentorship right now with a mom who's in the middle of just building her business from the bottom. And it's so hard because almost every single time we meet, we're going back to what is it that you really want? Having a really clear idea of it. Because I think as you're building your business, you have these things you're not willing to compromise on. So if you're ever looking at the people around you who are also building their businesses, they're probably rising a lot faster than you are because they don't have kids. They have a totally different sense of time than you do. They have the ability to go to Europe for 4 weeks and hop around and travel and shoot stuff here and there. And I think as a mom, especially, you're building your business at a really different pace. But as long as you have a really clear idea of what you're going after, you'll eventually get there. And I think just knowing where you're going is probably the biggest thing, because you can influence everything you do from that. No matter what type of wedding or shoot you have, you can say something in your captions online on Instagram. no matter what type of thing like you're actually getting booked for and actually working on, or you're not getting booked and you're not working, you can still do your own work and you can still say what you care about. You can still build the type of career that you want through having that really clear goal. And I think honestly, the thing that I run into all the time when I'm mentoring people or whatever is they don't know what that is. They don't know what they really want, or they're too afraid to say what they really want. They're just kind of reacting to what they're being given, or reacting to the inquiries that they're getting, or reacting to, the types of weddings that they're shooting, instead of influencing it by what they really want.
Do you think that, first of all, everything you said was kind of towards these mom photographers out there, but you're actually speaking to me. So that's really awesome. It's like, I feel like I'm trying to build this thing and achieve these certain goals in a certain amount of time frame. And I'm like, but I also want to be present with my wife and my daughter on a daily basis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not willing to sacrifice that. And what that's meant for the past 2 years is this has gone slower than I anticipated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm okay with it because I'm giving it my best, but also sticking to my values. And I don't want to build a business that doesn't have my values instilled in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't have my DNA inside of it, because at the end of the day, when I get to the end of my life, I want to be able to look back and say, I've spent a ton of time with my family, and that's what I valued.
Yeah.
Never cared about the money, because I've just seen so many people go after the money and build these businesses and just have terrible relationships with their spouses or with their kids.
Yeah.
And again, like it's just so sad to kind of see that. And that's a epidemic in our culture.
Yeah.
And so I'm not wavering from building a business
Yeah.
that has those values instilled in it. The second thing I think you said was just like people not knowing where they want to go. And I think it's really important that they get around a community of people and just have enough space in their life to be like, okay, what do I want?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do I want to go after? And I feel like I have that problem too, where you just like look on Instagram and you see what everybody else is doing and you're trying to build what you want by looking at thousands of other people of what they're doing.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work.
Yeah. It's going to be different for everyone. And I think the biggest thing that I see people struggling with is being really honest about what they want too. It's like hard for them to say, I want to only shoot 5 weddings and be able to support my family and, not work in the summer so I can have summers off with my kids who are in school the rest of the year, like whatever it is. But you can want those things. You are not a slave to corporations. Like you can build your business that way if you want to. And I don't know why people don't think they have that freedom. It's crazy to me because we have this is your own business. This is an expression of your work and your values. And you can, just do what everyone else is doing and eventually hit burnout and be done. Or you can build what you really care about, even if it looks different than someone else, even if it's slower than someone else.
Yeah. So awesome. Oh man. If we're interested in getting around someone who gives us permission to live the life that we want in order to, build the business that we want, build the careers that we want, but also build the family we want and get around somebody who can really speak into us constantly, where do people go?
Immersed Education.
Come on. But if you are interested in getting involved in a real, true community, and kind of back to what we were kind of talking about, like if you struggle with any of these like underlying things, that's why it's so important to get involved in a real community. And it's just awesome to be part of an education course, obviously learn a lot of things, but I think community is just like the biggest aspect and the ground foundation for anybody building their business. If you don't have community, I don't think you should be building a photography business.
Yeah.
Just straight up.
Yeah.
Because all these like little questions are going to come out as you're growing and you need a place where you can go and just ask, be vulnerable, feel like you're in a safe space and ask these questions as you're building. And so if people are interested, please go check out, I think it's immersededucation.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. And where can we find you on Instagram?
Yeah, Immersed Education or Anni Graham.
So amazing.
Yep.
You're incredible. Thank you so much for taking some time today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.